Like the Looney Tunes in 2003, we are back in action. Hello, how are you? Good to see you again. Today, as you probably guessed from the title, we're talking Moon Knight, Marvel's latest addition to their superhero roster and their first outing of 2022. It's a 6-episode limited series, and the first episode is a good one, so let's dive in. So if you've never heard of Moon Knight before and you're wondering what on earth is going on, let me give you a bit of background and then we'll dive into the episode. Moon Knight is one of Marvel's more supernatural characters, and it is one of many personas for Mark Spector, a ruthless mercenary who we only get a hint of in this episode. Mark Spector suffers from DID, dissociative identity disorder. Now in the comics, Mark Spector gets his DID from finding out a close family friend was actually a murderous Nazi and creates a number of personas following the trauma from that, but not all of them. Millionaire Stephen Grant, taxi driver Jake Lockley, and later on Moon Knight and Mr. Knight. Now I know what you're thinking. Millionaire Stephen Grant? The Stephen Grant we saw in this episode is, in his own words, a gift shopist. So they've not exactly been shy about the fact that this show is going to take a departure from the comics in a number of ways. But in doing that, they're actually kind of following the Moon Knight character, because every single comic run has had a distinctly different flavour to it, if you will, with certain powers being changed, certain elements of certain characters being changed. So the fact that they're kind of going their own way with this actually makes it in line with Moon Knight as a character. Part of what makes Moon Knight such an interesting character is that Mark Spector's mental state is not great, and it calls into question a lot of what he experiences as to whether it actually happened or not. For example, his encounters with Egyptian god Khonshu, who we've only had a few trippy glimpses of so far. We never really find out the extent to which these actually happen, or if it's all happening in Mark's head, and that has been consistent through the entire Moon Knight comic history. Last thing, and then we'll get on to the episode. Moon Knight is often referred to as Marvel's Batman, and while there are some similarities, it's not really a fair comparison. Moon Knight actually does have powers, and they vary depending on the phase of the moon, but we haven't yet seen how those are going to be adapted into the show, so we'll have to just wait and see. I do think that might be a reason as to why they've changed the Stephen Grant alter to be from millionaire to gift shop worker, to try and distance the comparisons between Bruce Wayne and Batman. Right, on to the episode. It's definitely one of Marvel's best first episodes, if not the best. You're immediately drawn in with Arthur Harrow, played by Ethan Hawke, performing a ritual which involves him sticking his feet into sandals that he's just filled with broken glass, which is a great way right out of the gate to hammer home that this is not going to be just like every other Marvel show. I'm still kind of grossed out thinking about it. One of the things this show is doing really well already is how it draws you into Stephen Grant's life. He's as clueless as to what is going on as we are, so we're all piecing the story together. Elements of his other lives are spilling into Stephen Grant's life, and he's struggling to keep a grip on it.
Yeah?
Oh my god, you're alive. What's wrong with you, Mark?
Why did you call me Mark?
Oscar Isaac plays Stephen Grant really well too. He balances a helpless descent into madness with a healthy dose of witty humour. In the promotional run for this show, Oscar Isaac was very outspoken that they wanted to handle the mental health and trauma aspects of this show honestly and do them justice, to the point where they hired a psychiatric consultant to make sure that his performance was true to life and not just like standard Hollywood crazy. Ethan Hawke is really good as Arthur Harrow, who gets a significant amount of development in this first episode as well, which is pretty refreshing from what we've seen before. Usually the villains are some third act twist who get dismantled pretty quickly, so it's nice to see that they're doing something a bit different here. Arthur Harrow is getting a complete redo from his comic counterpart, to which he is a deep cut one and done villain from the Moon Knight comics who is obsessed with pain, but according to Ethan Hawke himself, they've essentially developed a whole new character for the show, and the namesake is just what carries over. He was inspired by cult leaders and influential figures in his research for the character, and that really comes across in his performance, even in the way that he moves. Very commanding. He looks to be a standard first villain template for Marvel characters, essentially a mirror of the hero. Arthur Harrow has a special connection to Egyptian god Ammit, much in the same way we'll find out Mark Spector has a special connection to Egyptian god Khonshu. I like the way that they're being quite sneaky and hiding a lot of the violence by having Stephen slip back into Mark Spector or Moon Knight, we don't know, and essentially blacking out, waking up to the results of his actions. Because Moon Knight in the comics is absolutely brutal, going so far at one point as to carving the face off of one of his enemies, but I don't think we'll be seeing that on Disney Plus anytime soon. It keeps it more available to a wider audience, but I can see this could get old if they never pay it off. It feels like they're teasing the violence, so if they never pay that off, I can see why people would be frustrated about it. I'm not quite sure how I feel about Khonshu's voice in Stephen Grant's head. It's entertaining for sure, but I feel like it's just a little bit too close to what we have with Venom just now, and I know that's a risky comparison because not everyone likes Venom. I like F. Murray Abraham's voice, but when I look at Khonshu, that's not the voice I hear. And for those who don't know, Khonshu is the Egyptian god from who and where Moon Knight gets his powers. His title is literally the Fist of Khonshu. Again, his powers vary depending on the phase of the moon, but we'll have to wait for that to be fleshed out in the show to see if it's any different. There's not much else to touch on really. It was a solid first outing, but it was just a lot of setup. The performances were good, it was very well paced. I like that we got the costume in the first episode because Marvel is very guilty of holding that off until like the last episode, so I'm glad we got that out of the gate, because otherwise this show probably would have suffered from not having it. But with that said, I do have one minor question and one gripe. First of all, who is Stephen Grant calling when he's leaving these voicemails for his mother? We've seen that with the goldfish, clearly Mark Spector is covering his tracks before he hands the keys back to Stephen, so I wonder if he's maybe set up a voicemail box for Stephen to call his mum. If not, I feel sorry for the person getting all these voicemails. And second of all, that car chase scene. Yikes, with some of that CG not great. I just don't get this, right? Some of Marvel's CG is world class. Look at Thanos, look at some of the stuff done in Doctor Strange, but in other aspects, it's really, I don't want to say subpar because I couldn't do a better job myself, but compared to some of the best stuff they've done, I don't understand why some of the more simple stuff like compositing and vehicles and things interacting with other humans is so drastically different from some of the good stuff that they do. I don't know, I don't work for them. I understand that time and budget restraints are a huge problem for visual effects, so that's almost definitely what it is. I just don't understand why Marvel doesn't refocus their efforts into improving that, because clearly they've got some of the best stuff already nailed. So I don't get it, but I also I'm not a visual effects artist, I just watch a lot of the stuff. I don't know. But that's all I've got for Moon Knight episode 1. What did you think of the episode? Leave a comment and let me know. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next time.